Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for February 21st. We are here to tell you about everything that was happening on the feeds yesterday. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me today is Puya. How you doing, Puya?
I'm good. Bigger picture. It's probably best not to talk about it, but we'll talk about other stuff.
Sounds good. Yes, decent amount of things happened yesterday on the feeds. We still got Mark as the HOH, and right in the morning he was talking with James again. Their priority at this point is splitting up Brandi and Ari because they're a block together. The target is Brandi. They want Brandi out because then Ari and Omarosa will both be on their own, and there won't be any pair. There won't be any link between them or anything like that. I think their view of the situation is a bit off. I think that Omarosa has a much stronger bond with Ari than she does with Brandi, and I don't think that they're looking at it correctly. I think that Ari is the much bigger threat, but I'm fine with them making this mistake because Ari is doing a good job. But they are hesitant to even put Omarosa up on the block as a replacement if the veto gets used because they know that Ross and Marissa will vote Omarosa out, and then they won't be able to take out Brandi, which is their goal. So that's how they start the day, Booyah.
Yeah, they've zeroed in on wanting Brandi gone. Some of it has to stem with James and James's rapport with her from the beginning, which kind of blows over later on in the night. And I feel like Mark is kind of in the same boat because Mark is kind of not only has he watched it happen, but he's also getting that information fresh from James on the daily, how James feels about Brandi and all of that good stuff. So they want Brandi gone. And they want to keep this final four they've created with Ross and Marissa. And to do that, it's Ari and Brandi going up. Got to split a pair up. The veto gets interesting for them because the only outcome that might have to make them change what they're doing is if Brandi wins. Otherwise, this is who they want gone, and they're going to do anything they can to make it happen.
Yes. So that's where we stand then. James did talk about Brandi. She's such a bully. Even Ari thinks so. We're just so happy we're gonna get her out. They also confirmed to each other that they will be taking each other to the final two. Mark says that he thinks James can beat him, but he also thinks Ross and Marissa can beat him, so he'd rather be with James anyway. I don't know how much of this is true from Mark. I don't know if he genuinely will go to the end with James, or if he genuinely thinks he would lose against James. Maybe he thinks he would beat him. Who knows? But I think James believes it, and I do believe that James would take Mark to the final two 100%. So they've got that bond, that final two bond. Ari also spent some time during the day. Just like I want to just point out some of the things that Ari has done to ensure her safety that are just very subtle. Normally when you're on the block and you're campaigning, you're very aggressive. Like, do I have your vote? What can I get for your vote? Or you're just doing nothing in the hopes that they target the other person. Ari is sort of doing a combination of the two, where she's pretending to do nothing while actually subtly probing and making sure that everything is set. So she spent some time bonding with James during the day, just talking things through when she hadn't really done that too much before. I think it's very clearly like a campaigning kind of bonding, but I don't think he sees that. He gets to talk about how much of a saint he is. He's never lied in this game. Omarosa's so bad. Brandi's such a bully. And Ari's just sitting there like a shoulder to cry on.
Ari, I mentioned in my preseason rankings, I know a lot of it went to a dumpster pile after we saw what we're seeing now, but I did mention that Ari has the tools in the game outside of understanding of the game on doing well, and I think she's proven that. She has this power of being able to do these things, as you mentioned, very subtly, to the point where no one really questions it. I think James just needed to be heard. I think James just wants to hear himself since Mark has won, and I think Ari's allowed that to happen and has just been present at the right place at the right time to have these conversations where she's more of an earpiece than a mouthpiece, but it's as effective as anything. And by proxy, there are other people in that. Like, most of the things you would hear about Ari yesterday was, I don't want Ari gone. I want to save Ari. I want to save. The only person that's not really feeling that is Ross. And the funny thing is, both the boys have talked about how Ari is a big threat. However, they are way too gung-ho about wanting Brandi out to even consider that for a second. I think at this moment, Ari's probably in the middle of everyone's hit list, like third, maybe fourth for some people's option to like get out, which is the perfect spot to be with finale looming in, because she's pretty much a shoo-in to make it to finale night. And at that point, I think she's got a great shot at winning the whole thing if she's sitting at the end.
Yes. So we also had Ross during the day doing what Ross does, which is, I think, one of the things that makes him annoying to feed watchers, because there's obviously it's like he's a funny guy, he's charismatic. Yeah. He's playing the game hard. He's everything that you'd think we'd want, but he seems to be very disliked on the feeds. Part of that is the rat floater kind of a strategy kind of thing that turned into the Derek kind of strategy that also people also don't like. But I think another aspect of it is what is happening today, which is like he's running around pretending he doesn't know what's going on. He saying like, oh, I think I can go on the block. I don't know what's happening. It could be you, it could be Brandi, it could be me. And that's a fine strategy, but everybody knows he's lying. Nobody believes for a second that he thinks he can go on the block. So it's like, it's this kind of gameplay that's like, we understand that you have to lie to us right now, Ross, but we're not going to do anything about it, right? Like, it's, yeah. I think that's what makes people frustrated. I mean, I don't necessarily mind it myself, but I think, again, like when it comes to the jury, it's that's the kind of thing that people just, it's not as respectable, I think, when you're being lied to your face and you know that you're being lied to, but you're just like, whatever, just go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you, especially if it's someone you consider close, it's like, lie to the other people, but don't do it to me. We're at a point now where everyone knows you're doing it to me too. I'm just not going to say anything because I know this is your shtick. This is your spiel. Like, you're going to do this anyways, so we're just going to let it happen. It's and like, it was pretty obvious that he was going to be fine. Like, he's not really going to be looked at. He's going to be okay. But he just keeps spinning the web when he doesn't really need to. I think what he should be doing is kind of just talking to the people he needs to talk to kind of see what's going to happen post-noms, what's going to happen post this veto, what's going to happen for, like, set yourself up for the next, like, you're safe. Look at the next HOH. Don't bother, like, dealing with the stuff from this week. Don't feed people lines. And then they're going to go sit on the block. And now you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't think this was going to happen, or whatever kind of web you have to weave now. It's just too much. Even Varys disappeared for episodes on end in the last season. I think Ross needs to disappear a little bit for a couple episodes.
Yeah. He reminds me in a lot of ways, and I've said this before, but he reminds me in a lot of ways of Paul. And I think that I'm sure he's a fan of the show. He probably was paying attention last season. He's probably, whether intentionally or not, getting a lot of cues from Paul. And this is one of them. This idea that like even when people knew Paul was lying, they're just like, yeah, but he's just being Paul. But again, it makes you more angry at them later for whatever reason. But so we get the nomination ceremony. Mark nominates Brandi and Ari for eviction. And again, like, Ari is telling Brandi, like, Ross knew about this, right? Like, he totally knew, and he was totally lying to us and pretending he didn't. And Brandi's like, yeah, that's really annoying, because that was like one of the main deals we made early on. Was we promised each other we would always say if we knew the other one was going up on the block, and I always stayed true to that deal. I'm like, I don't know why he wouldn't do the same for me. It's just very annoying. Just Ross, just like playing well, And I think he still can win, but it's the same sort of thing with Paul, where it's like, I want to keep pointing out these things along the way, where if he loses the jury vote, we can go back to these podcasts and go, here's probably why.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like, you know how when you play a certain video game enough times on intermediate level, then you're like, okay, let me turn it up a notch. Let me play on expert, make it a little bit more challenging. The game of Big Brother can be played similarly if you're put in a position where you're like, okay, I can kind of play on this level and I'll be fine. Like I think Ari right now is playing on intermediate. She gonna be all right. Ross was on intermediate and he's like, nah, I want to play on expert. I want to play on legendary status because I think I'll be capable. He doesn't need to do that, but he keeps bringing it there. And it's funny because we go back. I was speaking to you. I was specifically on that update that morning where the night before, Brandi and Ross had a conversation and Ross was like, well, if there's one piece of advice you can give me, what is that? And Brandi said, don't make all these promises because you're not going to be able to keep all of them. Be selective with your promises. I mean, Exhibit A. He promises her that if she's ever going on the block, he'll tell her. It's harmless for him to tell her. I mean, sure, he's worried that she's going to blow up or whatever. Pull her aside when you know it's going to be close and be like, hey, I have a feeling you might go up. Not even as an assured thing, but to act like you don't know and then kind of like start feeding Bull that you might be going up. That's going to piss her off. You're supposedly her final two. Obviously, she's going to be ticked off. I think Ross just unnecessarily is doing these things. And I think you're right. If we get to finale night, these are the things that are going to blow him up and he's not going to win. And I do think he's got good equity still. I do think that he's played a like decent game, respectable game. It kind of goes, but there's so many factors in the air with this season, expedited season, non-sequestered jury season. Who knows? I know that at this point, the 7 people left, there's like a big chance that none of them are really going to get that much information from the outside because they're not going to have that much time. So I don't think these votes are going to be hurt all that much. However, if he does lose, we know exactly where we can point out and call our shot as to why. So
yeah, because it's like basically everyone in the house caught on to the fact that Ross has a deal with everybody. Everybody knows that Ross has a deal with everybody. And everybody except for Omarosa has just accepted it. Like, okay, it's annoying. We don't like it, but whatever, Ross, we'll accept that you have a deal with everyone. We're not going to target you. It's fine. But so then it's like they've already accepted something they don't want to accept about him. But then when he lies to your face about it, like pretending that you don't know, it's just like you're acting like our relationship is dependent on the fact that I don't know about this, but I do know about this and I've forgiven you for it. So why are you still lying to me about it? This is insulting. And then I think it speaks again to this kind of Paul kind of strategy or emotional state where he has this conversation with Marissa where he's again pushing, I think we should take Ari out over Brandi. And Marissa's like, no, we're not doing that. He's like, well, okay, fine, but I can't vote Brandi out. And she says, well, how about this? On Monday, all of those women were telling me to vote you out. And they were telling me how you are going to, betray me and not take me to the end. And he was like, Brandi and Ari both? She was like, yep. And he was like, you know what? That makes me feel better now. I feel okay now. I'm fine with letting go of either one of them. I feel good about this now. And it's that kind of like, that's his mentality for the game, which is like, he's not trying to justify his actions to other people. He's trying to justify his actions to himself. And that's where a lot of the Shannon trash talk behind her back came from, which was him trying to convince himself that it was okay, that he could feel better about it. And Paul did the same thing. And people don't want to see you convincing yourself that it's okay to betray them. They want to see you convincing them that it was okay to betray them. Because when you're convincing yourself, it's even more infuriating. You're like, now you're making yourself feel better about my betrayal. What about me? Do I get to feel better about this?
Yeah, and I think there's something that makes a good Big Brother player, I feel like, is being able to put yourself in other people's shoes and understand how they're going to perceive you, how you're going to be looked at, and taking action to avoid that being a negative thing. And I do think this whole thing that you just mentioned about how he just tries to convince himself, not necessarily convince others, this ties into that, and it does hurt him because, again, it goes back to, let's say, hypothetical, for all you youngins out there, you break curfew 3 nights a week. You're just breaking curfew. You're staying out past midnight. Your mom catches on. She asks you, well, how was last night? Like, did you sleep in fine? And you're like, yeah. You're lying to her face. She knows. Once she keeps asking about it, you kind of got to catch on that, okay, I think mom knows that I've been sneaking out. I should calm it down. You don't just keep going and like plead ignorance, because I think eventually that's going to have turmoil. And I think Ross doesn't understand that, with all of this lying to people's faces and just trying to make nice, and then talking so much smack behind their back is another thing. Like, just doing that, that's super insulting. Especially if you're playing this game where you're supposedly close with everyone. Again, non-sequestered jury. If people like, we don't know how these things are going to go with finale night. We have no idea. But you got to imagine, if people start murmuring, Ross is out there to get the most hurt from it, for sure.
Yeah. Yep. But again, it's like it is very much the Paul thing, where it's like he's playing so well in the house. It's just like there are these wide gaps in the jury management, which I feel like normally we don't see. I think it, like with Paul, it was one of the few examples where we were like seeing all along the way, both times he played, where it's just like, you're making these huge mistakes. Like, what are you doing? This could cost you. And it's sort of the same thing with Ross. But we'll see what happens. So James, the veto players were picked. James, Omarosa, Marissa, Ari, Brandi, and Mark will be playing in the veto competition. Basically everyone except for Ross. Ross will be hosting. And again, Ari does some good subtle work here. And I don't think Ross even knows what happened in this conversation. But Ari asks Ross, like, hey, are you going to vote me out? And he was like, hopefully Omarosa goes up on the block, and it doesn't matter, and so on and so forth. Ari recognizes what this means, and so then a little bit of conversation later, she's just casually like, hey, did you say something about like not wanting to sit next to a beauty pageant queen in the final two? Did you say something like that to Brandi? Because that that would be kind of hurtful. And he's like, what? No, what are you? I wouldn't say that. Like maybe I said I think you could win in the end, but no, I wouldn't. That's a really mean thing to say. And then he goes off and is talking to James, and he's like, yeah, you know what? I was thinking I couldn't vote Brandi out, but I'm willing to vote her out. What I'm gonna go with the house. That's fine. And it's just like, man, good job, Ari.
She killed it. That was very subtle play. Ross was pissed off that Brandi phrased it as such, and was not okay with that. And I love how everyone in this season, after last season, everyone's a human being. Everyone has feelings. Their feelings get hurt often, and they make moves like this. Yeah, Ross is kind of coming around to the fact that maybe it's a lost cause. I still think that him, after the numerous times he's brought it up yesterday, his ideal fantasy scenario is Brandi winning POV and Omarosa going up, with the hopes that Omarosa is the one to get booted. However, to correct that as well, James and Mark have spoken about how, well, we might have to put up one of our final four up, and James said, well, they're probably not going to like that. And Mark said, well, too bad, they don't have a choice, which I love that for Mark. If they choose to do that correctly, then yeah, then they'll definitely lock this four and send that old four, one of them out. But no, Ross flips and flops, and Ari is to be given credit for that 100%.
Yes, and then there's more work to be done, because as you just mentioned, James and Mark would prefer to put somebody else up on the block and make sure that Ari and Brandi get split up. And again, like, I don't know how intentional this was from Ari, but we have a whole sequence of events that starts off with Brandi drinking away. And then she starts talking about, or to James about, like, if it was my choice, I'd have you and Omarosa up on the block, James. And you know what? I don't even care, because you're going to vote me out anyway. And you wouldn't even be in this house if it wasn't for me. I saved you twice. And James is just incensed. He is not happy about this.
You mean James, the man man who masterminded his own safety in the
Yeah.
beginning. He is not letting anyone take the credit, let alone be Brandi. And that's where the bigger picture line came up. He's like, well, you could have done a lot more socially. And she's like, what do you mean? Bigger picture. Probably best not to talk about it. It was kind of like when he was talking to Ika and he's like, woke, did you see the other 3 things in my profile? Okay. That's his argument style is very bullet point, very one line, 2 words, done. And no, he blows up on her, not necessarily like yelling at her, but kind of starts talking about how you've been mean to me. Every chance you get, I'm just letting it happen. I've been letting it sit, but you know what? I'll be glad to see you go. I'm glad I'm voting you out. And then she calls him cocky. He's like, you've not seen me be cocky. I was like, I don't even know what that means.
How is that a defense? She's like, you know, you're kind of a good guy, but you're just too cocky. And his response to that, instead of being like, I don't know, denying it or whatever, he's just like, oh, you haven't seen me be cocky. Like, I'm much worse than you actually think.
You're lucky. You're lucky. My ego is not expanded more than it already has. And then so they were sitting in the backyard when this was going down. It was him, Mark, Brandi, and Ari. And then as he's walking out, Brandi says, well, I'm going to look forward to getting rid of you. And he's like, well, you're not going to get a chance to. And she's like, well, there's the cocky guy I was talking about. And then so he walks back in, immediately takes Marissa and Omarosa aside, or they come to him, and he explains to them everything that's been going on, what happened. And this is where I feel like now he's yelling. Once she's out of earshot, he's just cussing her out, talking about get the liquor away from her. And then I think it was Marissa's like, that's like her medication. He's like, no, it's not. And he's just outraged. He's outraged. And my favorite part of the night comes up when that door opens and Marissa and Brandi get to talking. So Taran, lead the way.
Yes, well, because James spends this whole time like complaining about Brandi. She can't hold her liquor. She didn't help orchestrate being saved. By the way, I helped orchestrate myself being saved. Brandi just went along with the group. And I hate. Stop apologizing for her. Like, stop saying you love her. I don't love her. It's like just like going off about Brandi. And, you know, Marissa is just like sitting there like, and then comes to discover that Brandi has been listening in and watching Marissa just nod along. And so Brandi is just like, I heard all of that, by the way, Marissa. And Marissa, well, I was just listening. You're just listening, huh? You were not just listening. You were agreeing. She's like, what? Look, what? I was just. He was just talking at me. Like, what? Like, what do you want? And she's like, well, why didn't you retort with you're so cocky, huh? Why didn't you say anything? Like it's Brandi was not happy.
Brandi was not happy, and Marissa is the most professional at hating being hated and has to go out of her way to try and like switch the narrative back to being loved. And it's one of the most annoying things to deal with people is when you just have this opinion and you're not allowed to have it because this person doesn't want to have it. So Marissa just stays by Brandi's ear for a good like solid 5-10 minutes just trying to repair this. Like, no, listen, I was like, yeah, no, you should get it off your chest. You should talk. Did I agree with him? No. Did I say that he was right and you were wrong? No. But like, I did listen to him. I did let him talk. I said he was allowed to be this way. And like, the more and more she spoke, the more and more Brandi just tuned her out and was trying to find something to open this bottle of Coke with.
The more she defended herself, the angrier Brandi got. Like,
yeah, Brandi's like, just let me open this Coke and ignore you. I don't want anything to do with this. And,
Brandi like just she like becomes a teenager when she's drunk. It's just like it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And James is just always a teenager.
Of course.
So Ari again starts comforting James. Like that Brandi, that is not very nice what she's doing. This is disappointing. You're like just telling him everything he wants to hear, which makes him believe, wow, Ari and Brandi are split up now because Ari is so mad about how Brandi treats me like she's such a bully, and Ari knows it. You know what, Mark? we don't need to break up Ari and Brandi. They're already broken up. If the veto is used, we can put Omarosa up on the block. That would be fine. And it's like, again, it's just like Ari just swooping in, changing minds, going out.
Willy-nilly. It's fascinating. It's fascinating how much he does with so little. And I know we've talked about how Ross is such a good player, but he overplays. How Omarosa's very conniving, sneaky, does things very well, but like no one trusts her. Ari's kind of got like a hybrid of everything. She's good socially. She's definitely capable of physically competing. She's able to maneuver her way through these situations, these dynamics and alliances made. And no one takes anything she's saying as sneaky. No one takes anything she's saying as a gameplay. They just think it's true, honest, human Ari. So to see all that and, combined with the Maslow army tweeting for the wrong vote, and then now James making these mistakes and overlooking things, we could be set up for some ridiculous things to come up in the next couple days.
Yes. Marissa also then just kind of jumps on this. She's like, "Oh, we can probably make a deal with Ari where she agrees to put Brandi on the block if she wins HOH and Brandi stays." So they're really trying to make this happen. Who knows how much it sticks? Certainly, there's still a couple days left before the eviction. So we'll see if James and Mark change their mind again. Certainly possible, but regardless, good work by Ari, and crazy set of circumstances to Brandi and James. These guys, they're like children, just yeah. So Marissa and Ross end up talking late at night. They were talking. They were like, James is such a great guy. We love James. We probably need to take him out, though. He's probably gonna win. Are we bad? Are we bad people?
Oh, speaking of bad people, sorry, let me rewind to this conversation that Marissa and Ross were having earlier in the day, where Marissa said, you know why you and I were put in this house? You and I were put in here so in case one of us goes home, they made sure there was good energy in the house. The good energy in the house, that's us. The eye rolling commencing around the world when those lines were spoken by Marissa. I don't understand how quickly people are able to justify these things in their head, and how quickly. I think that's one of the best things about this season that's made it entertaining to watch for us, is just how quickly people formulate these ideas and then they throw everything else that they believed in out the window for like a good 6 hours, and then they revert back to what they initially thought. So now they're thinking, James is too good. Maybe James goes next. But then who knows? With this veto, who knows? Let's say they win veto, Mark and James decide, oh, you know what? Maybe we keep them the same. Maybe we just do split them up. So I'm just excited to see where all this goes now. The episodes, have to admit, and I think everyone agrees, the episodes have not been all that, but the feed sure as hell have been, and it's been a great season to be able to cover.
Yeah, it's always interesting. Like, I feel like there's something very telling about, there are people that go into the Big Brother house and they just always see themselves as the hero, and America must love what I'm doing. America must agree with everything that I'm doing. And then there are some people that are just that doesn't affect them at all. They never think that they're the hero. They never think that America's on their side. And like, I don't know what that says about you, but it certainly doesn't come across very well on the show. It was funny because Ross and Marissa, when they were talking late at night, Ross was like, do you think people hate us because we're just kind of like drifting in between a bunch of alliances? And Marissa was like, well, we're not doing that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I think we do as a viewership, we enjoy when people don't talk or think about what we think of them, because that shows that they're focusing more so on the game. We think back to when the care packages were a thing and Natalie was trying to get them, James was trying to get them, James trying to get people to vote for him for AFP. We don't like that. We want you to focus at the task at hand, which is the cards you're dealt in the game, in that house. Focus on the house. Don't focus on what we think. Get the W and come out. That should be your goal. So the minute people start thinking about their perception and what they think we think, and then trying to like maneuver the game through that scope, that's no good because A, they will never know exactly what we think. There's no way they can predict what we think, and any actions they take following that idea is most likely false. So it might just hurt their game and simultaneously annoy us to high hell. So don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you wanted to bring up, Puya?
Nothing I see that we haven't covered. So no, I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank
so the irony of everything, after all this fighting, guess who picked out James's chip from the veto basket? It was Brandi. That's all. That's all that's left.
Of course. Brandi was also annoyed about the light being on when she was trying to sleep. Yeah, another little quibble with Ari. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be back tonight to recap the Wednesday night episode. Eric Stein will be joining us. It'll be a lot of fun. Make sure you check it out. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern to update you on everything that's been happening on the feeds today. And then we'll keep it going. Subscribe on iTunes, Big Brother dedicated Big Brother feed. Check out the Taran Show. Go to robhasawebsite.com. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Armstrong Taran. Puya is at Puyaism. I read about some kind of Russian Twitter scandal. So if you're Russian and a bot, I guess refrain from it. But otherwise, I think we're good. I don't know. I saw something about Twitter lockout. I don't know. I don't even know what it is. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time.